Okay, today we are covering typeface or typography in UI design, and to understand typography you need to first understand two terms. First one is the typeface and second one is the font. Now typeface is actually like handwriting, like every person has different handwriting. I will have some handwriting, you will have some different handwriting. Both of our handwriting will look different. So we can say that our handwriting is our typeface. It's actually how the text look, the thing we are writing, how it's looking, how the style of that thing, the design of that thing. That thing is known as typeface. Let me show you some examples. Like these are some typefaces. Like this is handwriting of first person, this is the handwriting of second person, this is third and fourth and so on. So we can say these all are different typefaces. And when it comes to font is actually the collection of different weights, and when I'm saying weight, it's the thickness of what I'm writing. Like if I write with too much pressure on my pen, then I will write some in bolder font. So font is actually the collection of different weights of a typeface. Like Roboto is a typeface, Roboto is a handwriting, and we have different weights of Roboto. So this collection is known as font. And in design industry we say font, we use the word font, we don't use the word typeface. There is a reason why, because majority of the designers don't know the difference between these two. Like what is typeface or what is font, they think that these two are the same terms. They use these two terms very interchangeably. So throughout the video I will be using the term font, so don't get confused between these two. So whenever I will say font, I mean typeface including with its different weights. Then we have different categories of fonts. Now these categories are divided based upon how they look. If you just look at serif fonts, and this is not a font, this is a font category. Like we have cursive handwriting, so it's a writing category. Similarly we have sans serif font, serif font. Now in serif we have like this pinpoint at the end of every letter. If you just look at sans serif, now sans means not serif, sans means not serif, so obviously we will not have a pinpoint here. It just have a simple plain corner, and if you just look at it, it has some special corners here. Like here we have a special corner. If you just look at the R of like serif, it's simple R, and if I look at the R of this thing, it has a pinpoint here. So this is the main difference between them. And we have so many other categories like script handwriting or display fonts and slab serif, but we don't use those things in UI design. 99.9% of the time you will use sans serif font in your UI design. Now last category we have is not text. We use this thing in UI design. Now the not text category don't contain any font, like it don't contain any alphabet, sorry, it contains special symbols. Like we have the like music language. If you anyone know music, this is the music language. I really don't know what we say these things, but it contains special symbols or any emojis. Like there is a website called Font Awesome, so that font contains emojis and icons, so that you don't have to import icons from external sources, and it's easy for developers to use that font. Next thing we have is some important properties of font or typeface. Okay, now first one is the line height. If you just look at this font, how much height is occupying, it's called line height. But in reality, if you just look at the canvas, let me remove it. Okay, let me first check the line height, like the what is visible on the screen. If you just look at this rectangle, wait a minute, let me resize it. Like the height of this rectangle is equivalent to this height of this L text or all the elements we have like this here. Its height is 48 pixels. But if you look in the canvas or on the screen, it's actually occupying more space than the actual visible line height. If it's 81 pixels, or you can also look here, in by default it's auto. If you just click here, it's 81 pixels, you can see that. Now why we have extra line height than the original line height? Because there are some characters which are not aligning properly with the line height, like G. G is going below the baseline. Now this blue line you see here, this is what we call baseline, where all the alphabets are lying, like they are standing there. So we call that line baseline. So some characters go below baseline. Now for those elements we always use an extra line height, and we have some special characters like which have some special symbols at the top. Let me try adding it one. Yeah, like this one, this is going above the line height. Like if I draw a rectangle here, you can see that thing, it's going above the line height. So to fix all these things, we always have a higher line height, and in UI design it's always recommended to have a line height of at least 120 to 125% or 130%, like greater than 120%, it's always recommended. And the way you can change the line height is simply click here and you can go and type here like 125%. But whenever you're giving line height, always give that thing in pixels. So how to calculate percentage to pixels? So what you have to do is you have to simply select the font size, like 68, like type here 68, and multiply it with the percentage, like we want 125%, so we will multiply it by 1.25%, like 1.25%. If I wanted 130%, then I will type 68, like 68, and 68 is the font size. If you are using 16 pixels font size, then you have to type 16 here, then multiply by 1.30. Okay, then we have a line height of 88.4. But as you can see, it's going in decimal, so we never use line height or font size in decimal. We always round it off. So what you can do is either use 88, it will work fine, or you can go with 89 or 90, that will work fine. But we never use decimals in line height or font size or anything. Now next thing we have is tracking. Now tracking is actually the letter spacing, like the spacing between two alphabets. You can see that R or A have some spacing, A or C have some spacing, and now to change this letter spacing we actually have an option here. We just type like 2 here, then it will increase the spacing here. And we change tracking to increase the readability because some fonts by default are very congested. So to adjust that thing, we usually increase the tracking to 1 to 2%. That's a good percentage. And when it comes to kerning, kerning is the third property. Kerning is also the letter spacing, but in this we adjust the individual letter spacing. If I feel like K and E have too much letter spacing, so I can simply click there and simply reduce the letter spacing by holding on Alt or Option key if you are on Mac, and then press comma, Alt, comma, or Alt dot. Okay, then I will be able to change the letter spacing between two letters. And when I'm changing the tracking, then I'm changing the letter spacing of all the elements. If I change the letter spacing here, I can simply type here 4, then it will change the letter spacing of all the letters we have. Okay, I hope you got what I'm trying to say. And there is one more property in Figma. If you just click on any text, we have first one is the obviously line height. Here you can change the line height. Second option we have is paragraph spacing. Like if I show you an example, if you want to show some text, like we have bullet points here, so obviously you can see the separation. But what if I want to remove the bullet points, or if I want to increase its readability, because it's still congested, like you cannot tell the difference between where the one line is ending, where one line is starting, because we don't have enough space. Now to fix that thing, like if I want to remove the bullet points, what I can do is I can increase the paragraph height, or in this case it will be list height. You can just hover over it and it will show you the name of that thing, like list spacing. And in this we have the paragraph spacing or paragraph height. Now if I type 12 here, then it will change the spacing between two lines. Now there is a difference between these two properties. If I just undo and type like 20 on the paragraph, or sorry, line height, then it will change the line height of all the elements we have, all the lines we have. Like it's changing spacing between these two lines and these two lines. But when we change the paragraph spacing, like if I type 30 here, it will change the spacing between two different lines. Now by different line, what I mean is like this one is actually one line. It's just that there is not enough space, so that's why it's jumped on the next line. If I just resize it, so you can see this is actually one line. There was not enough space, so that's why it jumped on the next line. So that's why we always increase the paragraph height for better readability. Next thing we have is how to actually use font scaling, or how to use typography in UI design. Now in UI design, whenever you want to give size to any body text or heading, we don't choose size randomly. Just like color palettes, we have every color pre-decided. We call that color palette or color styles. We do the same thing for typography or fonts. We fix the font size, font weight, line height, and kerning, tracking all the properties, so that we don't have to pick randomly, like I want the body text to be 16 pixels or 17 pixels. I want the line height to be 130% in this and 140% in this, because that will break the consistency and your design will look very ugly, or what we say, inconsistent. Okay. Now there is a way by which we select the font size. Like if I want my body text to be 16 pixels, then what should be the next font size? It should be 17 pixels, 18 pixels, 19 pixels. What should be the next font size? Because we cannot pick font size randomly. There is a rule for that. We call that thing font scaling. Let me show you a live example of font scaling. If I just go here, I have a type scaling system of SF Pro display font. Now here we have different font weight, like font weight is the thickness. If you just click here, it's the lightweight and medium, bold. And we generally use only 3 font weights. Like if I add semi-bold here, semi-bold and bold together will look very weird, and there is no point of adding 2 font weight or font size that look very similar. Similarly, we have medium and we have light, although we can use regular in some cases if you don't have lightweight, but we always choose light, medium, bold. And in some font, the light font weight is actually very thin. There is so many readability issues. So in that case, we go for regular font weight. And when it comes to the font size, like the smallest size I have here is 10 pixels. Although we try avoiding 10 pixels because it's too small. There are so many readability issues. So many people will not be able to read 10 pixels because it's too small. But in some scenarios like the nav bar, we might need 10 pixels. So we add 10 pixels to our type system. Then the next font size we have is 12 pixels, then 14 pixels, 16 pixels, 18 pixels. Now all the fonts which are greater than 16 pixels are considered to be a heading font or heading font size, and all the fonts which are equal to or smaller than are considered to be a body font. And there is a rule, the biggest font we will name it as 1. Like if it's a heading font, then we will name it as heading 1 or H1. And then the second largest font we will name it as H2. You can see here, like we have the biggest font here is 48 pixels. We named it as H1. And then we have H2, H3, H4, heading 5, heading 6, like in descending order. Like largest font H1. Similarly goes with the body, like biggest body font is 16 pixels, so we named it body 1 or B1 in short form. Then we have 14, then its name is B2, then 12 pixels B3, although you can name this thing as B4, but we generally use this thing as caption or label. Now let me show you how can you actually generate this type scale, because we don't adjust the size manually. Like we will type here, like my H1 size was 48, so I will type 48 here. You don't have to remember all these things. You can simply add those things to your style. Like I have created styles for my presentation. If I just click here, I have 162 pixels font size and line height is 130%. So you can see that this is called Figma's logo text styles. You can simply click here to create new text style, but there is a faster way to do it. You don't need to add every single font manually. There is a plugin for that will do your work very fast. Simply go to resources panel, simply search for this plugin style list, text and color style generator. And there are many plugins. You can explore more plugins. There is no fixed rule that you should use this plugin. Just type on YouTube how to generate type scale. There are so many websites that can do this job. And if you're watching this video from Wave Feature, Figma might have introduced some feature to generate type scale within Figma. You don't need any external plugin. Now if you just look at this plugin, we have some options here, like this is the base size. Now majority of the time base size is actually the body 1 size. Like if I show you here, like this is our base size. With the help of this font size, we generated all other type scales. If you just look at 18 pixels, 20 pixels, so we generated all the other type scale with the help of this 16 pixels. Now how we generated this type scale? By using a scaling factor or font scaling, what I told you earlier. Now in font scaling, what we do is we multiply 16 with that font scaling number. Like I have 1.250 here, or you can change it to other one like perfect 4, argument, perfect 5th, golden ratio, major third, but I will recommend you to stick to 1.25. That's a good number. Or you can go with 1.2 if you want. Now what this will do is, like, let me scroll down. If you just look at the font size, if we have 16 pixels here, then the next font size we have is 19 pixels. Now how it decided 19 pixels? It simply multiplied it with 1.2. Now after 19, it multiplied with 23, or it multiplied 16 with 1.2 2 times. Let me show you, like 16 into 1.2. And if I multiply it once more, it will be 1.2, like 23.04. Now you can see it's not perfect number here. It has some decimal like 23.04. Now for that we have an option here, round to integer. If you just click here and turn it off, like it will show you the exact number which was generated after multiplying it. But as I told you earlier, we don't use decimals in any property of font, neither in line height, kerning, spacing, anything. We always go with the exact number. Now what this option will do is it will remove the decimal number. Like I have 19.2, it will remove the 0.2 part. Similarly goes with here, it will remove the 0.04 and all the decimal part we have. So we will turn it on, and here you can change the font for your UI design, like the font which you are using. When it comes to selecting fonts for your UI design project, always select a font which have at least 3 font weights. They're like the regular font weight, medium and bold. And if you don't want to use the regular font weight, go with the light font weight. But if the light font weight is very thin, there are readability issues, you cannot read it properly, so you should skip that font weight and you should go always with the regular, medium and bold. These 3 will work fine for majority of the fonts, but there are some fonts that don't go with this thing. Okay, coming back to the plugin, if you just click here, you can generate more font size. Like I have 40 pixels here, like 48 and 57. And in UI design, we generally don't use fonts greater than 48 pixels for mobile. Yeah, in websites we can go beyond that, there is no limit. But if you're designing an app, 48 pixels, you will rarely use 48 pixels. Like maximum you will use is 32 pixels or 28 pixels, or like around 30 pixels the font size. So you can generate as many font size you want, there is no harm. But in mobile app design, you will rarely definitely use the big font size. And when it's come to the small font size, you should always include a font size around 10 pixels. Like it should be near around 10 pixels. Like in this case we have 11 pixels, I can generate more. So 9 pixel will be very small, so we will skip this, although you can include it if you want, but it's not recommended because it will be very small. No one will be able to read it. Even normal person will have difficulty in reading that font, so it's not recommended. Okay, we have 11 pixels, 13 pixels, 16 pixels. We can go with that. We can use 13 pixels for our body text or 16 pixels. And before adding it to style, simply select the font weight. Like you should select all the different font weights like regular, medium and bold. Simply select it and choose regular, medium and bold. Okay, and you have to do it for all the font size. I'm not doing it because it will take a lot of time. Then simply click on create style. Okay, then it will create a style here. Like these were my previous styles. Let me close it. And if you just go inside Roboto and expand, then you can see it has generated all the text style. Now here what you have to do is you have to group them. Select all the type style with same font size. You simply select the first font and select the last font, or you can simply select fonts one by one by simply selecting and hold on Control or Command if you are on Mac, and select the second one and third one, and simply right click and click add to new folder. Now when it's come to the naming the group or the folder, I will always recommend you to add the name like body1 or B1 and the font size also. So I will type here B1 and capital, always type in capital B1-16. Okay, it will be easy for you and the other team members working on design to understand everything. Like if I select this one and this one, and if you want to select a range in Figma or in any application, you can even try this in your file explorer or finder. Simply select the first one and hold down shift and select the last one, like the last thing you want to select. So it will select the range. Okay, if I just click and right click, add to new folder now, and 19 will be like H7. Let me calculate H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, H7, H8. It will be H8. And whenever you are naming headings, always start from the top, like from the H1. Otherwise, it will be very complicated. Wait a minute, H1, 19. Okay. Oh, sorry, I messed up. Okay, so now how you have to use this thing, simply select any text. Like if I copy this, and you don't have to type the font manually, simply click on this option like this 4 dots, simply click here the styles option, and it will show you all the styles you have. Now if I select scroll down and choose this 16 pixels bold, so it will be 16 pixels bold in Roboto. And if you want to detach this thing, you can simply click on this to view the properties, obviously. So as you can see, it has selected 16 pixels in bold. Let me undo it so that it stick to the style. And if you want to change it to other font size, you can simply click here and select any other font size like 19 regular. So it will change it to 19 regular, and you can change the alignment from here. And if you want to edit more properties, you can always go here, but there are very limited properties you can edit once you have created a style. So it's always recommended that you should edit all these properties first. And there is one more thing in UI design or any design like graphic design, or you are editing a video, you should not use more than 2 fonts. And in UI design, 1 font will always work. You don't have to pick 2 fonts. Yeah, if you have requirements, you have special requirements, you need 2 fonts, you don't have any other choice, then you can always pick 2 fonts, but don't go beyond 2 fonts. Like 3 font will be too much, so always try to stick to 1 font. Yeah, but in some cases you might need 2 fonts, you can go with 2 fonts. Now the question is how to pick the second font. Like imagine if I have selected this font, I have Roboto. Now how to pick the second font? Always pick a font which is different. You should be able to tell the difference by just looking. A normal person should be able to tell the difference by just looking. Let me show you an example. Like here I have some typeface categories. If you just look at this font, this is Roboto, and this is like Jolly, Jordan, Joby, whatever we pronounce it. So these two are visually very different. But if I select intern here, like intern, you cannot tell the difference. So these two have same font weight, and the style is so similar, you cannot tell the difference by just looking at it. You have to look very closely. And if you use these 2 fonts together, that will cause a mess. So what I will recommend you is always change the font category. Like this is a sensory font, so other font I will choose it. Either it will be a handwriting font or a sensory font or any script font. Like you can always go with another category of font. Like if I choose Times New Roman, Like this is a serif font, so it will work fine with Roboto, it will work fine with the sans serif font whenever you're picking two fonts. But always try to stick to one font if you are designing UI. Yeah, you can use two fonts in graphic design, you can even use three fonts in graphic design, that's not a problem, but you should be very smart when you are using three fonts. So these were some basic tips and properties that you should know as a beginner. Although there is so much to learn about typography, I will create a second part of this video. In that I will cover in detail about more properties and more tips and tricks how to use typography and improve your typography system in UI design. So if you learned something new and if this video was helpful, please comment and like the video, because that way YouTube will push this video to new designers and they will be able to learn. So it's very important that you share your feedback, and see you in future. Bye.